If Saudis carried out such an assassination, this should be seen as defiance against Turkey and disregard of law.
Saudi state TV reported that 11 princes, 3 current and dozens of former ministers have been detained.
Who murdered him, who lured him in there, who chopped him into bits, and his body's never been found. It's MBS, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, and he pays no price of any kind?
Did it cost you anything to leave?
I will not comment on the content of the agreement between me and the government.
Saudi Arabia couldn't have struck oil at a better time. It was the 1930s, and America was at the very start of its massive expansion into the world's superpower. And to fuel this growth, they needed oil, and a lot of it. See, oil isn't just used for fuel, it pervades every part of our lives. It fuels our factories, our homes, our plastics, even our fertilizer to grow our food. So whoever controls a lot of the world's oil supply is in a very powerful position. So Saudi Arabia invited the US over to build a relationship with them. They sold the US $170,000 worth of land that would coincidentally turn out to hold the biggest oil fields on the planet. The Saudi government set up a joint enterprise between them and the 4 biggest oil corporations in America, and this joint venture will be called Aramco. The drilling begins and the money starts flowing in. See, Saudi Arabia was smart. They knew they had a lot of leverage thanks to their oil, but they also knew these vast lands of oil also presented a problem. What was going to stop Saudi Arabia's not-so-friendly neighbors from just invading and taking over their oil fields? Not much. They needed security. They needed a big strong brother to watch over their back. So in 1945, while the US desperately needed oil to support the war, it struck a deal with King Abdul Aziz. Oil in exchange for security. America would train Saudi soldiers and build a state-of-the-art military base, and in return Saudi Arabia would sell them as much oil as they needed. This would prove to be the deal of a lifetime. And that's why today, the House of Saud is the world's richest royal family, allegedly worth over $1.4 trillion. Yes, you heard that right, trillion. That's more than the GDP of Australia, Spain, Mexico, and even Switzerland. In comparison, the British royal family is only worth around $88 billion. That means the House of Saud is worth 16 British royal families. When you think about the most powerful families in the world, you might think of the Rothschilds or the Rockefellers, or even the Waltons behind Walmart. But the Saudi dynasty has slipped relatively under the radar in the West, even though they're perhaps the most powerful bloodline in the world. Every time the Saudi royal family ends up in the news, it's scandal after corruption allegation. But the Saudi dynasty has learned a cold hard truth. With enough money and assassinations, any problem can be solved.
If there was a crime, and if the criminals are identified, what is necessary should be done to punish the perpetrators.
It's a gruesome murder that happened outside authorities.
President Biden promised to make the Saudis, quote, pay the price and make them the pariah that they are.
This is the unimaginable wealth of the House of Saud, the most powerful bloodline in the world. The House of Saud managed to make trillions of dollars because they're an absolute monarchy, a kingdom where they control all the state-owned enterprises. Because of this, they always know what to invest in and what businesses to start for the most profits. Unfortunately, we don't have that level of influence or insights. But what if you did? That is where Trends comes in. Trends is one of the most valuable knowledge hubs on the internet for aspiring entrepreneurs, by helping you find the next business idea before it explodes onto the world stage. Here's how it works. You sign up for Trends using the link below, and every month, Trends will send you new and emerging business trends that are still flying under the radar, saving you tons of research and money on testing new business plans. Trends even has live training sessions with industry experts, so you can learn all the skills you need to succeed, like how to fundraise, the best SEO practices, and much more. And if you can't make it to the live, you'll have all these resources waiting for you in their past training library. And one of my favorite Trends features is their databases, which gives you a ton of useful info, like the fundraising data for thousands of past Kickstarter campaigns, and the Trends Recession database, so you can learn how businesses made it through some of the toughest economic times in history. To take advantage of everything Trends has to offer, all you have to do is go to trends.co/JakeTran and you'll get a 7-day trial of Trends for just $1. That's trends.co/JakeTran to start your $1 7-day trial. Thanks to Trends for sponsoring this video. After that sweetheart deal with the US in 1945, the House Assad and the US worked together in peace. As the US rose to power over the decades, so did the House Assad. Everything was working out perfectly, until America got involved with Israel. In 1973, the Arab-Israeli War pitted most of the Arabic countries against Israel, who was trying to take over Palestinian land. America felt they should side with Israel, and this understandably made the entire Middle East pretty angry. As punishment, the biggest oil-producing countries in the Arabic world, who were a part of an organization called OPEC, decided it was time to teach the US a lesson. The Saudi king tells Aramco to stop drilling, and suddenly America was faced with an oil shortage unlike anything it had ever seen.
The odd-even system can't do anything about the problem of no gas. Some of the people online here have been in other lines and still don't have a tank of gas.
To emphasize, if you cut off an empire's fuel, they will literally collapse in a matter of months. And that was the position America was in. So the American empire had to strike another deal with the king of oil, Saudi Arabia. If Saudi promised to sell oil in only US dollars, which America could print out of thin air, America will give Saudi Arabia weapons, military training, political support, basically whatever the Saudi king/dictator wants, America will support it, or at least turn a blind eye. All in the name of securing America's lifeblood. The two powers agree and the petrodollar is born, where oil, the fuel of the world, is only sold in dollars, giving America a huge advantage against all other empires, because America could print dollars out of thin air, basically giving them free oil, and in exchange Saudi Arabia got the protection it desperately needed. What formed out of this agreement was an almost unbreakable alliance between the US and Saudi Arabia that still lasts to this day. Now Saudi Arabia was faced with another problem. It had more than enough oil to supply the world, but now they had way too much money. In 1980, Saudi only had a population of 9 million people, and it was making billions in profits. The royal family pocketed as much as they could, they reinvested money into America, boosting the US economy even more, and they also bought out Aramco, meaning that the House Assad completely took over oil production in the country and rebranded the company as Saudi Aramco. The royal family now had a monopoly on all oil production and sales in the country, and they became even more insanely rich than they ever were before, and it only went up from there. But with more money came a lot more responsibility, something that the House Assad didn't really want to deal with. The Bin Ladens and the Sads were great friends, and no, I'm not kidding. The Bin Laden family owned one of Saudi Arabia's biggest construction businesses, and they worked closely with the Saudis to build up Saudi Arabia's cities. And it was under Saudi royal orders that Osama decided to cross over to Afghanistan to fight against the Soviets. America asked the king to help with their fight against communism, so the king sent his best men, which included Osama. When Osama got back from Afghanistan, freshly radicalized with his very own unit of trigger-happy soldiers, he hated the fact that America was using Saudi, the Islamic world's holiest country, as a military playground, and he wanted them out. Obviously, the House Assad couldn't just kick their American friends out and lose all that money, so they attempted a delicate balancing act between keeping the US happy while not losing their best construction company. But that wasn't enough for Osama, as we all know, and he turned his hatred on the US. But here's the thing, even after America identified the mastermind behind 9/11 and how 15 of the 19 men involved were Saudi, the royal family refused to accept or acknowledge that their people were involved. America was worth trillions of dollars to Saudi Arabia, but without the popular support of its Muslim citizens, the House Assad wouldn't have a country to run. So they played their balancing act again, trying to keep America happy with its investigations and punishments it dealt, while not losing the support of the people who kept them in power. America invades practically every other Middle Eastern country besides the one the majority of the men were from, Saudi Arabia, and today nothing has really changed. Saudi Arabia is the world's biggest weapon buyer, and most of those arms come from the US. America would buy oil in dollars, and the House Assad would use those same dollars to buy weapons. It was the perfect trade, but then came 9/11. Everyone thought with Osama being Saudi Arabian and so many Saudis being involved in the attack that the US would stop selling to them, but that never happened. In 2020, Saudi Arabia spent over $46 billion on its military. Practically all of that, around 88%, went to the US. Losing such a great customer wasn't an option, so the House Assad and the US struck another deal. As long as it looked like Saudi was going after the terrorists, America can keep supplying them weapons. After all, Saudi Arabia is such an important country when it comes to keeping the peace in the Middle East, so America boosted its weapon sales to the House Assad, and unsurprisingly, a lot of those weapons end up in the same hands of the terrorists America is fighting against. And when those weapons aren't sold to America's enemies, they're used to fuel Saudi Arabia's endless wars, like the one in Yemen. It's been going on for over 6 years and has caused millions of deaths due to starvation or illness. Even after Saudi Crown Prince bin Salman ordered a journalist Jamal Khashoggi to be assassinated in Turkey, the US didn't bat an eye. Before he was killed, Jamal Khashoggi has started openly speaking out against Saudi Arabia's involvement in Yemen. That proved to be too much of an embarrassment, and the House of Saud made sure he disappeared. And all the Saudi Arabian suspects involved in his murder, they were all arrested or jailed in luxury villas in Riyadh. The US government didn't say a word. But it's not just outsiders that feel the wrath of the House of Saud when they overstep. With over 15,000 family members, the fighting within the bloodline is just as ruthless. You see, for decades, the Saudi throne was passed from brother to brother, not father to son. So when King Salman announced in 2017 that his son, not his brother, would become the next king of Saudi Arabia, the family was livid. How could the king abandon hundreds of years of tradition? And who did the new crown prince Mohammed bin Salman think he was? They weren't just gonna stand by and watch the entire House of Saud be restructured, or that's what they thought. Mohammed bin Salman, despite being 31 years old, was a ruthless strategist, and he knew just what to do with all his dissenting cousins. He purged them. He arrested more than 500 of his most powerful family members, princes, businessmen, princesses, ministers. He cleared out the Ritz Hotel in Riyadh and kept them under house arrest there for months. Why? Because of corruption. According to bin Salman, these 500 royals were, quote, weaklings who followed their own interests rather than public interests, who attacked public money without regard for religion, conscience, morals, or patriotism, end quotes. He was arresting them for the good of the kingdom, consolidating his power, getting rid of adversaries, and seizing his cousin's assets were just an added bonus. 2,000 bank accounts were frozen, and up to $800 billion in cash and assets were targeted for seizure. No one has dared to challenge the rule of Mohammed bin Salman ever since, and now he was free to enjoy life as the head of the richest bloodline in the world. Back in July 2015, Mohammed bin Salman, or MBS, arranged a private party to end all private parties. He rented out an entire Maldives resort for a month, which cost him $50 million. Then he brought in 150 women, celebs like Pitbull, Jennifer Lopez, Shakira, and Afrojack, all to perform and entertain his couple dozen male friends. The alcohol flowed, the Saudis partied, and at one point, MBS even chased the DJ off stage so he could try out the turntables. It was everything you could expect from a Middle Eastern billionaire and more. Until news of the party leaked to the press. Almost immediately, the Saudis left, the women were taken back to where they came from, and MBS reappeared in his home country, dressed in his traditional clothing, and shaking his head at the people who thought so little of religion and morality. Then he became crown prince, and he toned down his level of concern over what people thought of him. His recent spending sprees included a $450 million painting, Da Vinci's Salvator Mundi, a $300 million chateau in France, which was called the world's most expensive home, and a brand new $500 million super yacht. Here MBS was doing the exact same thing he arrested his own family for. And when he was asked why he felt so comfortable spending billions, while his people protested against their wages and economic situation, his answer was simple. Quote, I'm a rich person and not a poor person. I'm not Gandhi or Mandela. I'm a member of a ruling family that has existed for hundreds of years before the founding of Saudi Arabia. End quote.